Why they don't notice you. Why is it that you can stand among a crowd, speak from your heart, give your best, and still feel unseen? Why is it that you can labor day after day, pour yourself into your work, your relationships, your efforts, and yet remain overlooked as if you were made of shadows? There is a quiet pain in being invisible, a wound that is hard to describe but easy to recognize when it lives in you. It is the ache of giving everything and receiving nothing in return, of being present but not acknowledged, of walking into rooms where no one turns their head to greet you. This pain is heavier than mockery, for at least mockery admits your existence. To be ignored, to be unnoticed, is to be told without words that you do not matter. And this, more than failure, is what eats at the human heart. Failure can teach, rejection can sharpen. But invisibility leaves you in limbo, questioning not just your actions, but your very being. You begin to wonder, do I matter at all? Yet, as piercing as this question feels, the Stoic response is even sharper. The Stoics would tell you that the source of this pain is not in being unseen, but in believing you must be seen. The world has never promised to notice you. The world owes you no applause, no recognition, no validation. And if you have built your worth on being noticed, then you have built your house on sand. The tide will come, and the foundation will crumble. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, the most powerful man of his time, often reminded himself that the opinion of others was dust. Imagine that, the ruler of millions, commanding armies and wealth beyond measure, writing quietly to himself, not for fame, not for legacy, but as a reminder to stay grounded. He knew that even emperors could be forgotten, that even their names could fade into silence. If this was true for him, how much more for us? And yet Marcus did not despair. Instead, he turned inward. He measured his life not by whether others saw him, but by whether he lived in accordance with virtue. The ache of invisibility is universal, but it does not have to be your prison. When others overlook you, when your efforts pass unnoticed, when your presence feels like emptiness to those around you, you are standing at a threshold. You can choose to crumble under the silence, or you can choose to step into a deeper kind of strength. Stoicism calls you to the latter. For what does it mean to be noticed? To receive fleeting glances, to hear temporary applause, to gather recognition that fades as quickly as it arrives. These are shadows. They are not substance. True worth is not measured in the eyes of others, but in the substance of your own soul. If you act with justice, if you face hardship with courage, if you live with temperance and seek wisdom, then you have already achieved greatness, whether the world claps or not. The path forward begins with a shift. Instead of asking, "Why don't they notice me?" you must ask, "Why do I need them to?" That question cuts through the fog. It forces you to confront the chains you have wrapped around yourself. It challenges you to see that freedom lies not in forcing others to see you, but in no longer needing their gaze. Yes, the silence can hurt. Yes, being overlooked can leave you hollow. But it can also be the very ground where strength is born. The oak tree does not beg the forest to see it grow. It rises in silence, year after year, until its presence becomes undeniable. So too with you. The world may not notice you today, but if you root yourself in virtue, if you stand steady in truth, if you cultivate strength without applause, then whether noticed or not, you will matter. This is the hidden gift of invisibility. It is not a curse, but a crucible. It is where you learn to build yourself without needing the approval of others. It is where you discover that the power to define your worth has always belonged to you, and you alone. Why do we long so desperately to be seen? Why does the silence of others feel like a wound deeper than rejection? The answer lies in our nature as human beings. From our earliest days, we depended on recognition for survival. As children, we cried to be fed. We reached for our parents' gaze to feel safe. We sought approval to know that we belonged. To be unnoticed meant danger. To be cast out of the group meant death. This primal need lingers within us even now, long after the fires of survival have dimmed. Our ancestors lived in tribes where the unseen were forgotten and the forgotten did not survive. This old instinct still whispers in our bones, telling us that being ignored means we are in peril. And so, even in a world where our lives are not threatened by being overlooked, our souls still recoil at invisibility. The child within us still seeks a hand to hold, a voice to affirm, an eye to see. But the Stoics call us to confront this craving with honesty. They ask, must you always be seen to know that you matter? Must your worth be confirmed by the gaze of another? Epictetus warned that to tie your sense of value to the approval of others is to give them the keys to your freedom. If your joy rises with their praise and falls with their silence, then you are not living your own life. You are living theirs. You are a prisoner, not of chains, but of opinion. In the modern world, this hunger has only grown sharper. We measure ourselves in likes, in comments, in fleeting affirmations from strangers. We step into rooms hoping to impress, to be noticed, to be admired, and when no one turns their head, we collapse inward. Recognition has become currency, and we trade our peace for the hope of being acknowledged. But the Stoics would remind us that this is an empty exchange. Recognition is a shadow. It cannot feed the soul. Consider how quickly the gaze of the crowd shifts. Today you may be celebrated, tomorrow forgotten. Fame itself is proof of the fleeting nature of notice. The names of once great men echo faintly in dusty books, their glory faded into whispers. If the emperors of Rome, if the conquerors of nations, if the voices that once commanded armies could vanish into obscurity, what hope do we have that the crowd will cling to us? And if their memory is dust, why should we hunger so desperately for ours? The truth is this: the need to be seen is a natural instinct, but it is not a necessary one. You cannot erase it entirely, but you can master it. The Stoics teach us that what is natural can be disciplined. Hunger is natural, but gluttony can be tamed. Fear is natural, but courage can rise in its place. So too with recognition. The desire to be seen may stir within you, but it does not have to govern your life. Ask yourself, are you living for your own soul or for their applause? When you rise in the morning, do you shape your actions around what you believe is just, courageous, wise, and temperate? Or do you shape them to earn a fleeting nod from the world? When you lay your head at night, do you measure the day by the eyes that turned toward you, or by the virtue you carried within yourself? These questions cut to the heart of freedom. To be unseen is not to be worthless. To be ignored is not to be powerless. The only true loss is when you abandon yourself in search of recognition. The Stoics urge you to turn inward, to ground your worth in virtue, not in notice. Recognition will always be fickle, always fleeting, but a life rooted in wisdom and strength is steady, whether or not the world sees it. So the next time you feel the ache of being overlooked, remember this: the longing to be seen is old, but you are not bound to it. You can master it. You can stand in the silence of the crowd and still know that you are whole. And in that moment, you will have reclaimed what is yours: the freedom to live for yourself, not for their gaze. Fame has always tempted the human heart with its glittering promises. We believe that if people notice us, if they remember us, if our names echo in their conversations, then we will be secure. We imagine that recognition is a fortress against obscurity, that applause will protect us from the ache of being forgotten. But the Stoics teach us to look closer, to strip away the illusion, and to see fame for what it truly is: fragile, fleeting, and powerless to grant lasting worth. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself of this truth. He listed the names of once great men, generals, philosophers, leaders, whose memory had already faded in his own time. Men who once commanded respect, who once seemed immortal in glory, had become little more than faint echoes. If they could be forgotten, so could he. And if even emperors are destined to vanish into dust, why should any of us cling so desperately to the hope of being remembered? To crave notice is to crave something that cannot endure. Think of how many names history has buried. For every Caesar remembered, 1,000 others who fought, ruled, built, and created are lost in silence. Even those whose names we recall, what do we truly know of them? Their lives, their struggles, their laughter, their voices are gone. Only fragments remain, distorted and incomplete. Fame does not preserve a person. It distorts them into symbols, shadows of who they truly were. To chase this shadow is to surrender the substance of your life. And yet, people still spend their days clawing for attention, terrified of being unseen, convinced that without recognition their lives will mean nothing. This is the great deception, that to be noticed is to be significant, and to be forgotten is to be worthless. But Marcus Aurelius dismantles this illusion. He reminds us that the whole of time is vast, stretching endlessly before and after us. Against this infinity, what is the applause of a moment? What is the memory of a generation? Nothing more than smoke in the wind. The Stoics do not dismiss the ache of obscurity, but they redirect it. They say, if you long to be remembered, then live with virtue. For virtue needs no witness, no monument, no echo of fame. Virtue is its own reward, its own recognition. When you act with justice, courage, temperance, and wisdom, you have already achieved greatness, even if no one sees. And if someone does notice, if your life leaves an impression, it will not be because you sought it, but because truth has a light of its own. Consider the paradox. The more you cling to fame, the quicker it slips through your fingers. The man who spends his life shouting to be seen often fades as soon as his voice grows quiet. But the one who lives steadily, who pursues virtue without demanding recognition, leaves a presence that endures. Socrates never sought fame. He lived for truth, for wisdom, for dialogue with his fellow men. Yet his name has outlasted kings, his influence still shaping lives long after his death. His legacy was not crafted by chasing attention, but by aligning his life with what was real. We are not promised remembrance. The universe is vast, time is merciless, and obscurity is inevitable. But we are promised something greater. The chance to live in harmony with our nature, to cultivate virtue, to stand unshaken regardless of notice. If the world remembers us, so be it. If it forgets us, so be it. The measure of our lives is not in how long we are remembered, but in how well we lived. So let go of the fear of being forgotten. Let go of the hunger for fame. Notice how small it is, how fragile, how powerless to grant what you truly seek. Instead, turn inward. Build your life on virtue, not on recognition. Live so that when you look at yourself, you do not need the gaze of others to know you have lived well. That is the only kind of notice worth pursuing, and it is the only kind that can never be taken away. Dependence on recognition is one of the most subtle yet powerful chains a human being can wear. It does not rattle like iron, it does not weigh on the shoulders like stone, but it binds the soul in ways far more dangerous. You may think yourself free because no shackles grip your wrists, yet your spirit bends and bows whenever others withhold their approval. You live not by your own measure, but by theirs. This is slavery in disguise. Imagine a man who wakes each day with discipline, who works with diligence, who acts with sincerity. Outwardly, he appears strong, but beneath his effort lies a hidden hunger. He longs for someone to notice. If the applause comes, his heart soars. If it does not, he collapses into despair. He is no longer guided by his own reason, but by the shifting winds of recognition. His work, his speech, his very being becomes a performance, and when the audience falls silent, he is left empty. This is the corrosion of authenticity. When you depend on being seen, you begin to live not as yourself, but as a reflection of what you believe others want. You shape your words not to express truth, but to attract praise. You pursue goals not because they are just, but because they are impressive. You wear masks upon masks until you forget the face beneath. The tragedy is not that others do not notice you. The tragedy is that you no longer notice yourself. Epictetus warned his students of this slavery. He taught that freedom does not come from wealth, power, or status, but from mastery of one's own judgments. To him, the man who needs approval is a captive, no matter how high his station. The man who governs himself is free, even if he wears chains. True chains are not fastened to the body, but to the soul, and recognition is one of the heaviest. Marcus Aurelius echoed this when he reminded himself that reputation is nothing more than opinion, a shadow cast by the minds of others. He wrote that, "It is not what they say, but what you are that matters. If you know you have acted with virtue, why should the silence of others disturb you? If you know you have stood with justice, why should their ignorance weigh you down? Their notice or neglect does not change the reality of who you are." To free yourself from these chains, you must face the hardest question. Would you still live this way if no one ever saw? Would you still pursue justice if it earned you no recognition? Would you still practice courage if no one admired your bravery? Would you still cultivate wisdom if it left you unnoticed? The Stoic answer must always be yes. For virtue is its own reward, and the soul that lives by it is never truly invisible. But this liberation requires practice. It requires you to notice the chains each time you feel the sting of being ignored. Do not run from the discomfort. Examine it. Ask yourself why the silence wounds you. Ask what expectation has gone unmet. Each time you confront the craving, you loosen its grip. Each time you act without needing notice, you break another link in the chain. The world may never offer the applause you seek, but if you live by the gaze of others, you will always be bound. If you live by your own reason, by your own virtue, by your own alignment with what is true, then you will always be free. Recognition is a gift others may give or withhold, but freedom is a gift you can grant yourself. And once you taste it, you will see that the chains were never worth carrying at all. There is a form of strength that requires no applause, a kind of presence that does not beg for eyes, but commands them naturally. The Stoics understood this power and lived it. They called it character, but we might call it presence, the quiet authority of a person who stands rooted in virtue. You can see it when someone enters a room and without a word shifts the atmosphere. They do not demand recognition, yet people feel it. They radiate a steadiness that others cannot ignore. This presence is not built on appearance or performance. It is not the charisma of flattery or the manipulation of charm. It is born of integrity, courage, temperance, and wisdom lived so deeply that they become visible even without proclamation. The Stoics knew that one who is master of himself needs no announcement. His life speaks louder than words. Socrates embodied this. He did not dress in wealth or seek grand titles. He did not chase the favor of the powerful. He walked barefoot, asked questions, and lived simply. Yet his presence was undeniable. Men followed him into conversations, not because he shouted, but because he carried truth in his being. His calm composure, his fearless pursuit of wisdom, made him a force that even the noise of Athens could not drown. This is the power of presence. Integrity is the first stone in its foundation. Do you act the same when no one is watching as when all eyes are upon you? If you do, then you carry an authenticity that cannot be faked. People sense it, even if they cannot name it. To live without duplicity, to keep your word, to stand firmly in your values. This consistency shines brighter than any performance. It builds trust, and trust is the heart of presence. Courage strengthens it further. The one who does not waver in hardship, who stands when others flee, commands attention without seeking it. Presence grows strongest in difficulty, for when storms rise and chaos spreads, those who remain calm and resolute become pillars others naturally turn toward. Marcus Aurelius endured the weight of empire, war, plague, and loss, yet he faced it without self-pity. His presence as a leader was not loud, but it was unshakable. Temperance refines presence into something lasting. The frantic man, driven by impulse and desperation for notice, cannot hold attention for long. His energy burns bright but fades quickly. But the measured man, the one who governs his desires, speaks with restraint and acts with discipline, holds authority. His composure creates space for others to breathe, and in that space they feel his presence. This is not weakness, it is strength under control. And wisdom completes the circle. When a person speaks with clarity, not often, but when it is needed, the weight of their words lingers. Presence is not talking over others, but speaking when truth demands it. A single phrase from the wise can silence a room, not because it was shouted, but because it cut through confusion with precision. The Stoics offer exercises to cultivate this power. One is the practice of silence. In company, resist the urge to dominate. Let your actions, your calmness, and your discipline do the speaking. Another is to deliberately endure moments of being ignored without protest, to strengthen your spirit against the need for validation. Another is to reflect daily. Did my actions today align with my values, or did I bend to be seen? Each practice polishes your presence until it shines without effort. Test this yourself. Move through one day without trying to be noticed. Do your work diligently, listen more than you speak, act with quiet integrity. You may find that others respond differently, not because you demanded it, but because presence cannot be hidden. It is felt more than seen, sensed more than spoken. The paradox is this: the more you seek to be noticed, the weaker your presence becomes. The less you need to be seen, the stronger you stand. To cultivate Stoic presence is to become unignorable without asking, to embody a strength that does not fade with the silence of others. It is to live in such a way that your very being is testimony, that whether the world looks or not, you are radiant with dignity. The history of Stoicism is not the history of men who were always celebrated. It is, more often, the story of those who were overlooked, dismissed, even despised, and yet found in obscurity the soil where greatness could grow. To understand how to endure being unnoticed, you must look at the lives of those who endured it before you, those who stood in silence and were tested by invisibility, only to emerge stronger because of it. Epictetus was born into chains. As a slave, his name did not matter. His presence did not command respect. His life belonged to another. He was not invited into circles of power, nor was he seen as anything beyond property. And yet, within the walls of servitude, he discovered a truth that no master could steal. Freedom begins in the mind. His body could be ordered, his movements controlled, but his judgment, his ability to choose how to respond remained his own. He lived for years unseen by society, but in that obscurity he forged the strength of spirit that would one day make him one of philosophy's most enduring voices. The world ignored him when he lived, but it cannot ignore him now. Marcus Aurelius, by contrast, lived in the glare of power. He was emperor, the most visible man in Rome, watched by soldiers, senators, and citizens alike. Yet even he knew the emptiness of recognition. Surrounded by attention, he turned inward, writing his meditations not for an audience, but for himself. His most lasting words were never meant to be read by others. He did not write for fame or legacy. He wrote to discipline his mind, to remind himself of the fleeting nature of power and praise. The paradox is striking. The man most noticed by the world chose to act as though he were unseen. He sought no applause, only alignment with virtue, and because of that, his private reflections became timeless. Seneca's story shows another path through obscurity. He reached the heights of political influence as an advisor to Nero, yet he also knew the sting of exile, banished to an island where his talents seemed wasted and his voice unheard. It was there, in exile, overlooked by the empire he once served, that he wrote some of his most profound letters. His wisdom did not depend on the Senate's approval, nor on the recognition of Rome. Stripped of status, he found clarity. The words, born in silence, outlasted the noise of those who dismissed him. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, began with ruin. A wealthy merchant, he lost everything in a shipwreck. Arriving in Athens with nothing, he was just another stranger in a bustling city. No one cared who he was. He wandered into a bookshop, read about Socrates, and began a journey that would shape philosophy for centuries. But at first, he was ignored, just another voice in the agora. He taught in the open air, with no guarantee of recognition. His persistence, his clarity, and his devotion to truth eventually drew followers. His philosophy, born from obscurity and failure, became the foundation of an entire school of thought. These stories reveal a pattern. Invisibility is not a curse, it is preparation. Epictetus built freedom in chains. Marcus Aurelius built clarity in solitude. Seneca built wisdom in exile. Zeno built resilience in loss. Each was shaped by being overlooked, and each turned that obscurity into strength. And so must you. When the world ignores you, when your efforts pass unseen, when your voice seems to vanish into silence, you are standing in the same place where philosophers once stood. Obscurity is not the proof of your failure. It is the workshop of your soul. The question is not whether others notice you. The question is whether you are willing to keep building, keep living with virtue, keep practicing wisdom, even if no one sees. Perhaps invisibility is the truest test of all. Anyone can act nobly when praised, when rewarded, when celebrated. But can you act nobly when no one is watching, when no one claps, when no one cares? This is the heart of Stoicism. To live for virtue, not for notice. To live so truly that obscurity itself becomes a teacher. For if you can endure being unseen and still live with courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom, then you have discovered a strength that cannot be taken from you. The overlooked Stoics remind us of this. Greatness is not found in being seen, but in being steady. The silence of the crowd does not erase the worth of a virtuous life. It only refines it. And in time, as with Epictetus, Marcus, Seneca, and Zeno, the world will discover what was once hidden. The light born in silence is the light that endures. The applause of others is one of the most deceptive comforts a human being can experience. It feels sweet, it feels nourishing, but it is fleeting, and it leaves you weaker each time you rely on it. The Stoics taught that to live for applause is to live in chains, because you hand over the reins of your soul to strangers. Their approval lifts you, their silence crushes you, their disapproval destroys you. You are no longer your own master. You are a puppet pulled by hands you cannot see. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of this danger again and again. He wrote that the opinion of the crowd is shallow, unstable, and often ignorant of what truly matters. The crowd sees the surface, but virtue lives in the depths. He warned himself not to seek their approval, for even the applause of 1,000 voices cannot change the reality of your actions. To depend on it is to chase smoke, to try to drink from the air. Detachment from applause is not about indifference to excellence. It is not a call to mediocrity or apathy. It is about shifting the route of your motivation. Why do you act? Why do you create? Why do you speak? If it is for applause, then you are enslaved. If it is for virtue, for justice, for truth, for wisdom, then you are free. The Stoics teach that a noble act is noble even if no one notices, and a shameful act is shameful even if the crowd cheers for it. The crowd cannot change reality, so why give them mastery over your peace? How do you practice this detachment? Begin with journaling. Each day, reflect not on who noticed you, but on whether you lived according to reason. Ask yourself, did I choose courage over fear? Did I treat others with fairness? Did I master my desires and impulses? Did I pursue wisdom, even in difficulty? These questions ground you in what is yours. They bring your focus back to your own choices, where it belongs, rather than scattering it among the opinions of others. Another practice is memento mori, the remembrance of death. The Stoics often contemplated their own mortality, not to dwell in despair, but to see clearly. When you remind yourself that soon both you and those who might applaud you will be dust, the sound of approval loses its hold. What is the value of applause if it dies with the lips that give it? What is the worth of recognition if it cannot follow you beyond the grave? The truth is harsh but liberating. Applause does not endure, but virtue can. Negative visualization is another tool. Imagine that you will be ignored forever, that no matter what you do, no one will notice. Can you still find meaning in your actions? Can you still live with dignity? The Stoic answer must be yes, because the measure of your life is not in the noise it creates, but in the harmony it holds within. If you can imagine a life of complete obscurity and still feel peace, then you have broken the spell of applause. This detachment does not strip you of passion, it gives you strength. Consider the artist who paints not for fame, but for truth. Consider the leader who acts not for praise, but because it is right. Consider the parent who loves not to be thanked, but because love is their nature. These lives shine more brightly than the lives of those who chase recognition, because their actions are rooted in something unshakable. History itself proves this lesson. Many of the world's greatest thinkers, inventors, and teachers were ignored in their time. Their work was dismissed, their names unknown. But because they acted from conviction rather than applause, their contributions endured. They built from virtue, not from validation, and in doing so, they planted seeds that grew long after the crowd had turned away. To detach from applause is to become untouchable. No amount of silence can starve you. No amount of criticism can destroy you. No amount of fleeting praise can intoxicate you. You remain steady, anchored in your own reason. The crowd may notice you or overlook you, but it no longer matters. You are free. Imagine the strength of such a life, to wake in the morning and act with excellence without needing anyone to see, to move through the world with integrity without craving thanks, to lay your head at night not wondering if you were noticed, but knowing you lived as you should. This is the Stoic freedom. It is not escape from life. It is mastery of it. and it begins the moment you detach from the applause of others and anchor yourself in the only recognition that matters, the recognition of your own soul. If letting go of applause frees you from chains, then building inner radiance gives you wings. The Stoics did not teach us simply to stop caring about recognition. They taught us to cultivate something far greater, a strength, a clarity, a calm that shines no matter who is watching. This inner radiance is the quiet light of a soul aligned with virtue. It does not need to shout to be seen. It does not need to beg to be noticed. It simply is, and its presence cannot be denied. What does it mean to radiate from within? It means you become the kind of person whose presence leaves an impression even in silence. You walk into a room, and though you do not demand attention, others sense steadiness in you. Your voice carries weight, not because it is loud, but because it is grounded in truth. Your actions inspire trust, not because they are grand, but because they are consistent. This is not charisma crafted to manipulate. It is authenticity lived so fully that others cannot help but feel it. Consider Zeno, shipwrecked and left with nothing. He arrived in Athens a stranger, unseen, unnoticed, with no wealth or title to earn him respect. He could have despaired, but instead he turned inward. He studied philosophy, rebuilt his life upon the foundation of reason and virtue, and began teaching in the open marketplace. At first, few listened. He was simply another voice in the noisy agora. But as his inner radiance grew, as his steadiness and clarity deepened, people gathered. Not because he demanded notice, but because truth draws those who are ready for it. From one broken man ignored by the world, Stoicism was born. This is the lesson. Radiance begins in silence. It is built not in the spotlight, but in the shadows, not in applause, but in discipline. You cultivate it by living daily in alignment with your highest values. Ask yourself, what do I want others to feel when they encounter me? Do I want them to feel courage, kindness, wisdom, or resilience? Then live those virtues in every small choice. Do not announce them. Do not advertise them. Live them so fully that they shine through without words. Radiance is not built overnight. It is polished day by day through action. Each time you choose honesty over deception, you polish it. Each time you face fear with courage, you polish it. Each time you restrain anger, practice patience, or show compassion, you polish it. Over time, the light grows brighter, and though you do not demand it, others will see. The oak tree is a perfect image of this truth. It does not clamor for recognition. It does not force the forest to admire it. It simply grows, slowly, steadily, rooted deeply. And in time, its presence becomes undeniable. Birds rest in its branches, travelers seek its shade, storms crash against it, and it stands firm. So it is with the Stoic soul. You do not shout for attention. You live in such a way that your very being becomes a refuge for others, a symbol of strength in a chaotic world. This inner radiance is not for vanity. It is not for your own pride. It is for the service of others. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that human beings exist for one another. Your presence is not meant to blind, but to guide. Your strength is not for domination, but for example. Your radiance is not about being admired, but about illuminating a path for those around you. To live with virtue is to become a light, not because you crave to be seen, but because the world needs it. Try this exercise. Write down 3 virtues you want to embody so deeply that people feel them when they are near you. Then live each day as if those virtues were your only measure. Do not wait for others to recognize them. Trust that the steady practice of virtue builds a radiance that no silence can erase. When you live this way, you stop fearing invisibility. You understand that whether or not people see you, the light remains. Whether or not they praise you, your presence endures. And in time, those who once overlooked you may come to realize that your quiet strength was more powerful than any clamor for attention. The Stoic cure for being unnoticed is not to fight for recognition, but to become someone whose very being shines with clarity and virtue. In a noisy world, such a light cannot remain hidden. Fame fades, applause dies, recognition comes and goes, but inner radiance, the calm, steady glow of a soul living in harmony with truth, outlasts them all. This is what the Stoics built in silence. This is what you can build too. And when you do, you will see that whether or not others notice you, you have become something far greater, a light that endures, a presence that cannot be extinguished. The question remains, what do we do with the ache of being unnoticed? The Stoic answer is both simple and demanding. It asks you to shift your entire understanding of worth, to ground your life not in the unstable eyes of others, but in the unshakable foundation of virtue. The first step is to stop craving notice. Recognition may come, but it is not yours to control. To cling to it is to chase a shadow, to exhaust yourself pursuing something that slips through your fingers the moment you grasp it. Let the applause fall silent without fear, and you will discover that your worth has not diminished in the slightest. The measure of your life lies not in what they see, but in how you live. The second step is to break free from the invisible chains of dependence. When you notice yourself hungering for approval, stop and question it. Why do I need them to notice? What power have I given them over me? Each time you confront this, you weaken the chain. Each time you act without seeking recognition, you loosen its grip. Freedom is not a gift the world gives you, it is a decision you make for yourself. The third step is to cultivate presence through character, integrity, courage, temperance, wisdom. When these are alive in you, you radiate an authority that does not need to demand attention. You become the kind of person who is felt even in silence. Those who no longer need to be noticed often command the deepest respect. Presence cannot be faked, and it cannot be stolen. It is the natural consequence of living in alignment with virtue. The fourth step is to embrace obscurity as preparation. The Stoics remind us that invisibility is not failure, it is training. Epictetus forged freedom in chains. Marcus Aurelius found clarity in solitude. Seneca uncovered wisdom in exile. Zeno rebuilt his life from ruin. If they had depended on recognition, their greatness would have died in silence. Instead, they let silence refine them. So too must you. Obscurity is where you prove to yourself that you live for truth, not for applause. The final step is to build inner radiance. Live so steadily, so authentically, so aligned with your values that your very presence shines. Do not chase the light of others' eyes. Become a light yourself. This radiance is not for pride, but for service, not to be admired, but to guide. Whether the world notices or not, your glow remains. And in time, light of this kind cannot be hidden. This is the Stoic solution. Stop craving notice. Free yourself from dependence. Build quiet authority. Let obscurity shape you and cultivate a radiance that endures. Do this, and whether the world turns its eyes toward you or away, you will remain unshaken. You will have discovered a freedom deeper than fame, a strength greater than applause. The less you need to be noticed, the more unforgettable you become. Those who demand attention vanish as soon as the noise dies, but those who live with courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom leave an impression that no silence can erase. Recognition may or may not come, but significance is found in how you live, not in who sees it. So walk forward with steady steps. Let the crowd be silent if it must. Let the world overlook you if it will. None of that can touch the reality of a virtuous life. Live with dignity even in obscurity. Build your strength even in silence. And in the end, you will see the truth the Stoics knew. Greatness is not in being noticed, but in being true. And when you live truly, you carry a light that even the darkest silence cannot extinguish.